A millionaire spots a black girl with adoption papers bearing his signature. As he investigates this mystery, what shocking revelation about his past will come to light? And if you cherish your family and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The annual Sterling Foundation Charity Gala buzzed with San Francisco's elite, their jewelry catching the light from crystal chandeliers. Ryan Caldwell stood near the bar, nursing a scotch while watching potential donors network. At 42, he had mastered these events, knowing exactly when to smile, when to shake hands, and when to reach for his checkbook. His tailored suit and confident stance marked him as one of the city's most successful real estate developers. A woman in her mid-50s approached him, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She didn't carry the usual air of someone seeking a donation. Instead, her expression held something that made Ryan's chest tighten, determination mixed with accusation. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, pulling a manila envelope from her bag. "These belong to you." Before he could respond, she pressed the envelope into his hands and disappeared into the crowd. Ryan opened the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly. The document inside bore an official seal and his signature at the bottom, a signature he didn't remember making. As he read further, his blood ran cold. They were adoption papers for a 7-year-old girl named Maya Johnson. The next morning, Ryan sat in his corner office on the 38th floor, spreading the documents across his desk. His assistant had already verified their authenticity. The signature matched his own perfectly, dated 3 years ago. He ran his hands through his salt and pepper hair, trying to make sense of it. The child's mother was listed as Lisa Reynolds. Lisa, a name he hadn't allowed himself to think about in years. Their relationship had ended tragically 8 years ago, but according to these papers, she had given birth to a child, his child, and somehow obtained his signature for the adoption. The implications made him feel physically ill. Ryan canceled his meetings for the day and drove to St. Catherine's Home for Children in Oakland. The building stood like a tired guardian, its red brick facade weathered by decades of service. Inside, the walls were decorated with children's artwork, but they couldn't mask the institutional feel of the place. Children of various ages moved through the hallways, some running, others shuffling with downcast eyes. A boy no older than 5 clutched a worn stuffed elephant. 2 teenage girls whispered in a corner, their faces a mixture of hardness and vulnerability. Each child represented a story of loss, abandonment, or tragedy. The reality of what these walls contained hit Ryan hard. These children were society's afterthoughts, waiting for someone to choose them, to give them a chance at a normal life. And somewhere in this building was Maya, a little girl who, according to these papers, shared his blood. A social worker named Sarah Martinez greeted him, her expression cautious but professional. She led him to her office, explaining the protocols for visiting children at the home. Ryan listened, his mind racing. How had he never known about Maya? How had Lisa managed to hide this from him? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do now? The office walls held more children's artwork, including a striking painting of a butterfly emerging from a dark cocoon. Sarah noticed his attention on it and smiled sadly. "That's one of Maya's," she said. "She's quite talented." Ryan's throat tightened. He pulled out the adoption papers, explaining his situation. Sarah's expression shifted from professional courtesy to concern as she listened. She explained that Maya had been at St. Catherine's for 3 years, ever since her mother's death. The girl had maintained good grades despite her circumstances, but struggled with forming attachments to potential adoptive families. Looking out the office window at the playground where children played, Ryan felt the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders. Somewhere out there was a little girl who carried his genes, who had lost her mother, who had been living in this institution while he continued his life of luxury, completely unaware. The guilt was overwhelming, but more than that, he felt a growing sense of determination. He needed to understand how this had happened, why Lisa had kept the secret, and what it meant for his future. But first, he needed to meet Maya. Ryan returned to St. Catherine's the next day, his heart pounding as Sarah led him to the facility's art room. The space smelled of paint and clay, with sunlight streaming through large windows onto tables covered in creative projects. In the corner sat a small girl with curly black hair, focused intently on her drawing. Maya didn't look up when they entered. Her shoulders were hunched protectively over her work, her hand moving deliberately across the paper. Ryan observed her from the doorway, taking in every detail. She had Lisa's nose and determined expression, but there was something in the set of her jaw that reminded him of his own father. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. Sarah introduced him simply as Mr. Caldwell, a friend who wanted to meet Maya. The girl looked up then, her dark eyes studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Children weren't supposed to have such knowing eyes. She didn't smile or speak, just watched him as he pulled up a small chair, comically small for his frame, and sat near her table. "What are you drawing?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. Maya hesitated before sliding her paper toward him. The drawing showed a woman with long hair standing in a garden, surrounded by butterflies. The detail was remarkable for a 7-year-old, but it was the emotion in the piece that caught his breath. The woman's face held both joy and sadness, and the butterflies seemed to be carrying her away piece by piece. "That's my mom," Maya said quietly, her first words to him. "I draw her so I won't forget what she looked like." She pulled out more drawings from a folder, each one telling a story of loss and longing. There were pictures of the home she'd lived in with Lisa, scenes from their life together, and increasingly abstract representations of emotions Ryan recognized all too well: abandonment, confusion, hope. As Maya explained each drawing, her initial reserve began to fade. She spoke with the peculiar mix of childhood innocence and old soul wisdom that often marked children who had seen too much too soon. She told him about her favorite subjects in school, art and science, her best friend at the home, a girl named Lily who had recently been adopted, and her dream of becoming an artist who painted murals on buildings so everyone could see beauty everywhere they looked. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Patricia Chen, the home's director. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s who had clearly spent decades advocating for children in the system. Her handshake was firm as she assessed Ryan, looking for any sign that he might be another disappointment in Maya's life. In her office, Director Chen laid out Maya's situation with brutal honesty. The girl had shown signs of depression after her mother's death, though she worked with a therapist weekly. She struggled with trust issues and had sabotaged 2 potential adoptions, believing that everyone would eventually leave her. Her academic performance was excellent, but teachers reported that she rarely participated in class discussions and had few friends. "She's exceptional," Director Chen said, "but she's hurting. And now you appear with these papers, Mr. Caldwell. I need to know your intentions. Are you here out of curiosity, guilt, or do you actually plan to be part of this child's life? Because if why? Oh, you're not serious about this. I suggest you leave now and never come back. She's been through enough." Ryan felt the weight of the director's words. The easy thing would be to write a check, ensure Maya had the best care possible, and return to his life. But the image of her drawings, the echo of Lisa in her features, and the undeniable pull he felt toward this small, wounded soul made that impossible. "I don't know exactly what I'm doing," he admitted, "but I know I can't walk away. She's my daughter, and somehow I need to make this right." Director Chen's expression softened slightly. She pulled out a thick file and began explaining the legal process ahead, the psychological evaluations required, and the commitment he would need to demonstrate. Ryan listened, taking notes, already thinking about how to reorganize his life around this new reality. As he left the home that day, Ryan paused to watch Maya on the playground. She sat alone under a tree, sketching in her notebook, separate from the other children but seemingly content in her solitude. In that moment, he recognized something of himself in her isolation, and the connection between them felt suddenly, undeniably real. The investigation into Lisa's final years began in Ryan's home office late one night. His computer screen glowed with old emails and social media posts, each piece revealing a life that had unraveled while he remained oblivious. Lisa Reynolds had worked as a graphic designer, maintaining a small but steady client base until about 8 years ago. Then the trail of her professional life began to fade. Ryan hired a private investigator who uncovered Lisa's medical records from that period. She had been diagnosed with depression following her mother's death, the same event that had led to their breakup. Ryan remembered their last conversation, how he had dismissed her grief as excessive, telling her to get over it and focus on their future. He had been so absorbed in a major development project that her pain had seemed like an inconvenience. The investigators' report painted a stark picture. Lisa had moved to Oakland, taking smaller jobs while her savings dwindled. She had reached out to Ryan multiple times during her pregnancy, leaving voicemails he never returned and sending letters to his office that his assistant had filtered out as personal matters. One such letter, dated 7 years ago, still sat unopened in a box of archived correspondence. Ryan's hands shook as he opened the yellowed envelope. Lisa's familiar handwriting filled 3 pages, explaining her pregnancy, her fears, and her hope that he would want to be part of their child's life. The final paragraph contained words that would haunt him. "I know you're not ready for this, Ryan. You never learned how to love because you never experienced it yourself. But this child deserves a chance at both parents' love, even if we're not together." These words triggered memories of his own childhood. Ryan found himself remembering the morning his mother left, her suitcases packed while his father was at work. She had kissed 8-year-old Ryan's forehead and promised to return soon. That promise remained unfulfilled for 40 years. His father had responded by burying himself in work, leaving Ryan in the care of a series of nannies. During a session with his therapist, Dr. Harrison, Ryan explored how this abandonment had shaped his adult relationships. "I became successful because I learned that depending on others meant risking pain," he admitted. "But I passed that lesson on to everyone who tried to get close to me, including Lisa." The investigation revealed that Lisa had maintained a close friendship with her art teacher, Eleanor Martinez, during her pregnancy. Ryan arranged to meet Eleanor at her studio in Berkeley. The elderly artist's walls displayed several of Lisa's works, including a self-portrait from her pregnancy period. In it, Lisa's expression held both joy and fear, her hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. Eleanor shared stories of Lisa's determination to provide for her child, working multiple jobs while attending prenatal classes. She had hoped until the end that Ryan would respond to her messages. When Maya was born, Lisa had somehow obtained Ryan's signature on the adoption papers, a detail that still needed explanation. Eleanor suggested that Lisa's former roommate, Sarah Chen, might know more about this. The connection to director Chen at St. Catherine's suddenly became clear. Sarah Chen was Patricia Chen's daughter, and she had helped Lisa during her final months. This explained the director's protective attitude toward Maya and her skepticism of Ryan's sudden appearance. Ryan's guilt intensified with each revelation. He had been in the same city while Lisa struggled alone, his wealth and influence meaningless to her needs. The contrast between his life and hers during those years felt like an indictment of his character. He had built towers and made millions while the mother of his child worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide a future for their daughter. A final piece of the puzzle emerged when Ryan discovered Lisa's cause of death: complications from an untreated heart condition. She had delayed medical care to pay for Maya's needs, a sacrifice that ultimately proved fatal. The timing aligned perfectly with his company's biggest success, the Caldwell Tower project that had made him a billionaire. Ryan's decision to adopt Maya crystallized during a board meeting at Caldwell Enterprises. As his CFO droned on about quarterly projections, Ryan sketched butterflies in his notepad, a habit he'd unconsciously picked up from Maya. The choice felt inevitable, but the announcement sent shockwaves through his professional circle, particularly affecting his relationship with Victor Sterling, his former business partner. Victor had helped build Caldwell Enterprises from the ground up, serving as COO until a disagreement over ethical practices led to their split 3 years ago. Now heading Sterling Development Group, Victor maintained significant influence in San Francisco's business community. His reaction to Ryan's adoption plans came swiftly and strategically. During a private meeting in Victor's downtown office, the tension between them became apparent. Victor leaned back in his leather chair, his perfectly manicured fingers steepled under his chin. "Think about what you're doing, Ryan," he said, his voice carrying the false concern of a predator. "A single man with your responsibilities, adopting a child? The board won't like the distraction." And have you considered what the press will say about your sudden interest in a black child? They'll call it a publicity stunt. Ryan understood the threat beneath Victor's words. Their shared history gave Victor ammunition, late-night deals, questionable land acquisitions, and the gray areas they'd navigated to build their empire. Victor had always been the one willing to push ethical boundaries, while Ryan looked the other way, prioritizing profit over principle. The media campaign began subtly. Business journals published articles questioning Ryan's leadership focus. Social media buzzed with anonymous sources discussing his Playboy past and suggesting the adoption was a calculated move to soften his image before a planned political campaign. Victor orchestrated everything with precision, using his network of journalists and influencers to shape the narrative. Ryan found himself struggling to maintain his composure as reporters ambushed him outside his office, shouting questions about his intentions. The pressure intensified when Victor leaked photos of Ryan's past relationships, painting him as emotionally unstable and uncommitted. Each new headline felt like a personal attack, not just on him but on the possibility of a future with Maya. The stress began affecting his work. During crucial meetings, Ryan caught himself checking his phone. 4 news alerts. His assistant fielded increasing numbers of calls from concerned investors. The board called an emergency session to discuss the public relations situation. Throughout it all, Ryan felt the weight of his past choices pressing down on him. His previous focus on wealth and power had left him vulnerable to Victor's manipulations. In his private moments, doubt crept in. Victor's words about his capabilities as a father echoed his own fears. Ryan's childhood had left him with no model for parenting, no understanding of how to provide emotional support. His relationship track record suggested a pattern of avoiding commitment. The painting in his office, Maya's butterfly emerging from darkness, seemed to mock his attempts at transformation. The situation reached a critical point when Victor arranged a meeting with potential investors from Dubai. During the presentation, Victor subtly highlighted Ryan's personal distractions and suggested that Caldwell Enterprises might soon need new leadership. The implied threat was clear: back away from the adoption, or watch your empire crumble. Ryan left the meeting feeling cornered. His lawyer advised that Victor's campaign, while unethical, stayed just within legal bounds. Fighting back would mean engaging in a public battle that could hurt Maya. The pressure to choose between his professional legacy and his newfound daughter felt overwhelming. Late one night, staring at the city lights from his penthouse window, Ryan received a call from Director Chen. Maya had asked about him, wondering why he hadn't visited recently. The simple question cut through his business concerns, reminding him what truly mattered. He realized that Victor's power over him stemmed from values he no longer wanted to uphold. The call from St. Catherine's came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Maya had fallen from the playground equipment, resulting in a broken arm and a mild concussion. Ryan abandoned a crucial investor meeting mid-sentence, leaving his bewildered board members as he rushed to the Highland Hospital emergency room. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Maya's small form in the hospital bed. Her dark curls spread across the white pillow, making her seem even more vulnerable than usual. The sight of her arm in a temporary cast struck something deep within Ryan's chest. Director Chen stood nearby, her usual stern expression softened by concern as she explained how Maya had been trying to reach a bird's nest in the old oak tree. Maya's eyes fluttered open when Ryan approached her bedside. Through her pain medication haze, she managed a weak smile. "You came," she whispered, surprise evident in her voice. The simple statement revealed how many times in her young life adults had failed to show up when she needed them. Ryan gently took her uninjured hand, making a silent promise to never be one of those adults. During her recovery, Ryan visited daily, bringing art supplies she could manage with one hand and reading her stories from books he remembered from his own childhood. The hospital staff began to recognize him, no longer questioning his presence during non-visiting hours. He learned to navigate the complex world of children's pain management, medical insurance, and the particular challenge of entertaining a bright 7-year-old confined to a hospital bed. Upon Maya's release, Ryan suggested a day at Golden Gate Park to lift her spirits. The outing marked their first real time together outside institutional walls. Maya's face lit up at the sight of the California Academy of Sciences, where they spent hours exploring the rainforest dome and aquarium. Ryan discovered that Maya shared his fascination with marine biology, asking detailed questions about each species they encountered. In the park's botanical garden, they found a quiet spot for lunch. Maya's cast, now decorated with colorful drawings from her fellow residents at St. Catharines, didn't stop her from attempting to feed nearby squirrels with pieces of her sandwich. Ryan watched her laugh at the animals' antics, noting how her natural enthusiasm had begun to emerge when she felt secure. The peaceful moment shattered when a group of children from a nearby playground approached. One boy pointed at Maya's cast, making a crude comment about her appearance and background. The other children joined in, their taunts carrying the casual cruelty of youth. Ryan felt Maya stiffen beside him, her joy evaporating as she tried to make herself smaller. Something primal awakened in Ryan. He stood up, his imposing height and stern expression causing the children to step back. His voice remained controlled but carried an authority that made even adult passers-by stop and listen. He didn't shout or threaten. Instead, he spoke about kindness, about the strength it takes to overcome hardship, and about how true character shows in how we treat others. The children's parents, drawn by the commotion, approached with defensive expressions that quickly turned to embarrassment as they realized the situation. Ryan's reputation in the business community lent weight to his words as he calmly suggested that they use this moment to teach their children about empathy and respect. After the group departed, Ryan found Maya looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "No one ever stood up for me like that before," she said quietly. The statement hung between them, heavy with implications about her past experiences. Ryan knelt down to her eye level, ignoring the grass stains on his expensive suit. "I will always stand up for you," he promised. "Always." The question came during their weekly art session at St. Catharines. Maya's cast had been removed, and she was carefully working on a new painting while Ryan sketched beside her. Without looking up from her work, she asked, "What was my mom like when you knew her?" Ryan set down his pencil, his heart hammering. He had known this conversation was inevitable, but preparation didn't make it easier. Maya continued painting, giving him space to gather his thoughts, demonstrating a patience beyond her years. The afternoon sun filtered through the art room windows, casting long shadows across their shared workspace. "Your mother was an artist like you," Ryan began, choosing his words carefully. "She saw beauty in everything. She could take ordinary moments and make them extraordinary through her art." He watched Maya's brush strokes slow as she listened. She was kind, but also strong. When she believed in something, she fought for it. Maya added careful details to her painting, a woman's face emerging from swirling colors. "Did you love her?" The directness of the question caught Ryan off guard. In the weeks since discovering Maya's existence, he had been wrestling with his memories of Lisa, trying to understand his own past actions. "I didn't know how to love properly then," he admitted, recognizing that Maya deserved honesty. "I was focused on building my business, on becoming successful. I thought that was what mattered most. Your mother understood love better than I did. She tried to teach me, but I wasn't ready to learn." Setting down her brush, Maya turned to face him fully. "Is that why you weren't there when I was born?" The question carried no accusation, only a child's need to understand. Ryan felt the weight of all his past choices pressing down on him. He explained, as gently as he could, about not knowing about her birth, about Lisa's attempts to reach him, about his own blindness to what truly mattered. Maya listened with that same unnerving wisdom in her eyes, processing each piece of information. When he finished, she asked the hardest question yet. "Would you have wanted me if you had known?" Ryan moved to kneel beside her chair, meeting her eyes directly. "I was a different person then, Maya. I can't honestly say what I would have done. But I know who I am now, and I want to be your father more than I've ever wanted anything in my life." The conversation sparked something in Ryan. He needed to know more about Lisa's final years, not just for himself, but for Maya. He began a deeper investigation, starting with Lisa's old art studio in Oakland. The landlord remembered her, speaking of her dedication to her work even as her health declined. Ryan discovered a storage unit in Lisa's name, still paid up through an automatic withdrawal from a small savings account. Inside, he found her paintings, journals, and personal effects, a time capsule of the life she lived while he remained ignorant. Among the items was a letter addressed to Maya, to be given to her when she was older. The weight of the sealed envelope felt enormous in his hands. He knew he should wait, should let Maya read it when she was ready, but the need to understand drove him to carefully open it, promising himself to reseal it perfectly afterward. Lisa's words were filled with love and hope for their daughter's future. She wrote about her decision to keep Maya from Ryan, explaining that she believed he needed to find his own way to fatherhood, if he ever could. The letter contained no bitterness, only a mother's wisdom and forgiveness. Lisa's leather-bound journal revealed a story that unfolded like a carefully crafted tragedy. Ryan sat in his study late into the night, reading entry after entry, each page illuminating the parallel life that had existed alongside his rising success. The journal began shortly after their breakup, when Lisa first discovered her pregnancy. The early entries showed hope, Lisa's excitement about becoming a mother mixed with anxiety about facing it alone. She wrote about watching Ryan's company grow from afar, seeing his name in business newspapers while she attended prenatal appointments by herself. Her words carried no resentment, only a deep sadness about the distance between the life she was living and the one she had imagined they would share. One particularly powerful entry described her decision not to tell Ryan about the pregnancy. "I watch him on TV, announcing another billion-dollar deal. His eyes are focused on something far away, that same look he had whenever I try to talk about our future together. He's chasing something I can't see, and our child needs more than a father who sees them as an obligation. Maybe someday he'll be ready for love. Until then, I'll love enough for both of us." The journal revealed that Lisa had maintained a close friendship with Sarah Chun, who was then working as a legal clerk. Through this connection, Lisa had learned about a document Ryan had signed years earlier, a broad power of attorney during a period of business expansion. This explained how she had managed to get his signature on the adoption papers, using the power of attorney before it expired. She had ensured Maya would have a legal connection to her father, even if he never knew about it. Meanwhile, Victor's campaign against Ryan intensified. He began targeting Ryan's business relationships, suggesting to key clients that Caldwell Enterprises was becoming unstable under Ryan's distracted leadership. Stock prices fluctuated as market analysts questioned the company's future direction. Board members received anonymous dossiers detailing Ryan's past relationships and suggesting that the adoption was part of a larger mental breakdown. The pressure reached a new level when Victor orchestrated a television interview with one of Ryan's ex-girlfriends, who tearfully described him as emotionally unavailable and controlling. The interviewer drew direct parallels between Ryan's relationship patterns and his sudden interest in adopting Maya, implying that both were manifestations of a deeper psychological issue. Ryan found himself increasingly isolated. Former friends and business associates began declining his calls, fearful of being drawn into the controversy. His assistant reported that several major clients had placed their CTS under review. The board called for another emergency meeting to discuss the company's declining public image. In the midst of this professional crisis, Ryan continued reading Lisa's journal. The later entries documented her declining health, her choices to delay medical treatment to save money for Maya's future. She wrote about watching their daughter grow, seeing traits of both parents emerge. "She has his determination," one entry noted, "but hopefully she'll learn to direct it toward love rather than success." The final entry, dated just days before her death, contained a message that changed everything. "I saw Ryan today, though he didn't see me. He was leaving his building, stopping to help a homeless man everyone else ignored. For a moment, I saw the man I fell in love with, the one who existed before ambition consumed him. Maybe I was wrong to keep Maya from him. Maybe she would have been the one to teach him how to love." The confrontation with Victor occurred during Caldwell Enterprises' annual shareholder meeting. The company's main conference room buzzed with tension as board members and major investors gathered to discuss the company's direction. Ryan sat at the head of the table, Lisa's journal tucked inside his briefcase like a talisman. Victor arrived precisely on time, impeccably dressed and radiating confidence. He had orchestrated this moment carefully, acquiring enough proxy votes through his recent campaign to potentially force a leadership change. The room fell silent as he took his seat, several board members noticeably shifting their chairs toward his end of the table. The meeting began with standard financial reports, but the underlying current of anticipation made every presentation feel like merely a prelude. When Victor finally stood to address the room, his practiced smile conveyed absolute certainty in his victory. He began outlining his concerns about the company's direction, presenting charts showing recent market volatility and citing personal instability in leadership as the primary cause. Ryan listened quietly, allowing Victor to build his case. He observed the faces around the table, people he'd worked with for years, who now looked at him with doubt or avoided his gaze entirely. Victor's voice carried through the room as he described Ryan's erratic behavior and concerning personal choices, clearly referring to Maya without naming her directly. When Victor finished, Ryan stood slowly. Instead of moving to the presentation screen as expected, he walked to the center of the room. "Before we continue," he began, his voice steady, "I'd like to tell you a story about two men who built a company." He described their early days, when he and Victor had shared a genuine vision of creating something meaningful. As he spoke, he pulled out Lisa's journal and began reading selected entries. The room grew still as Lisa's words filled the space, painting a picture of a woman who had seen through both men's facades, Ryan's emotional walls and Victor's carefully hidden ruthlessness. Ryan revealed how Victor had discovered Maya's existence years ago through his connection with the adoption agency board, keeping the information secret until he could use it as leverage. "I made mistakes," Ryan acknowledged, looking at each person in the room. "I prioritized profit over people. I built walls instead of bridges. But standing here today, I'm choosing to be a different kind of leader." He outlined his vision for Caldwell Enterprises' future, one that balanced profit with purpose, success with social responsibility. As he spoke, Ryan clicked through a presentation showing plans for a new corporate initiative, the Lisa Reynolds Foundation for Arts and Education, dedicated to supporting single parents and underprivileged children. The foundation would partner with St. Catherine's and similar institutions, using the company's resources to create real change in the community. The momentum in the room shifted. Edition board members who had been avoiding his gaze now leaned forward, engaged. Even Victor's confident smile began to fade as he realized his carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. When Ryan finished speaking, the first to stand was Janet Chen, a senior board member and respected voice in the business community. "I've served on this board for 15 years, Janet declared, "and this is the first time I've seen real leadership, not just management." Others began nodding, adding their own voices of support. The vote that followed wasn't even close. Ryan's position remained secure, and the board unanimously approved the foundation initiative. Maya's emergence into the public eye began unexpectedly during St. Catherine's annual art exhibition. The event, typically a small affair attended by local supporters, transformed when several prominent art critics discovered her work. Her painting of butterflies emerging from shadows, representing her journey from loss to hope, captured particular attention for its sophisticated use of symbolism and emotional depth. The San Francisco Chronicle ran a feature story about the young artist, describing her work as displaying wisdom beyond her years. The article mentioned her connection to Ryan Caldwell only in passing, focusing instead on her artistic talent and the way she used art to process trauma and healing. This organic recognition infuriated Victor, who had spent months trying to control the narrative around Ryan and Maya's relationship. The art exhibition's success led to increased attention on St. Catherine's home itself. Other children's artwork began receiving recognition, and donations to the home increased significantly. Maya, though initially shy about the attention, gradually began speaking to small groups about the importance of art therapy in helping children cope with difficult circumstances. Her natural eloquence and authenticity touched everyone who heard her speak. Director Chen observed a transformation in Maya during this period. The once withdrawn child now helped younger residents with their art projects, showing particular patience with children who struggled to express their emotions. She created a mural in the home's main hallway, depicting a garden where butterflies helped lost children find their way home. The project became a collaborative effort, with other residents adding their own elements to the scene. Victor, watching his influence slip away, launched what he thought would be his masterstroke. He hired investigators to dig deeper into Lisa's past, looking for anything that might discredit her or raise questions about Maya's placement with Ryan. When this failed to yield results, he began suggesting to reporters that Ryan was exploiting Maya's artistic talent for publicity, using her trauma for corporate gain. The accusation backfired spectacularly when several of St. Catherine's staff members, led by Sarah Chin, came forward to describe Ryan's genuine involvement in Maya's life. They detailed how he spent time with her away from cameras, his consistent presence during her hospital stay, and his quiet support of other children at the home. Sarah revealed how Ryan had been funding art supplies and educational programs for all residents, requesting no publicity for these contributions. Meanwhile, Maya's story inspired a broader conversation about arts education in underfunded communities. Several prominent galleries offered to host exhibitions featuring work from children in foster care. The Lisa Reynolds Foundation, now fully operational, began providing art supplies and instruction to foster homes across the Bay Area. Maya's butterfly motif became a symbol of transformation and hope within the foster care community. The situation reached a critical point when Victor attempted to purchase the property where St. Catherine's was located, planning to force the home to relocate to a less desirable area. His shell company made an aggressive offer to the property's owners, but his scheme unraveled when investigative journalists traced the company back to him. The attempted manipulation of vulnerable children's lives marked a turning point in public perception of Victor Sterling. The final confrontation between Ryan and Victor unfolded during a press conference initially called to announce the expansion of the Lisa Reynolds Foundation. The grand ballroom of the Caldwell Tower buzzed with reporters and community leaders. Ryan stood at the podium, presenting plans for a new art center for underprivileged youth when Victor made his unexpected entrance. Victor strode down the center aisle, flanked by his lawyers. He carried a thick folder of documents, his face bearing the confident smile of someone holding a winning hand. Without waiting for an invitation, he approached the podium and began distributing copies of what appeared to be internal memos and financial records from St. Catherine's home. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor announced, his voice carrying through the sound system, "I regret to inform you that this entire situation has been an elaborate fraud." He proceeded to outline a complex theory, suggesting that Ryan had orchestrated Maya's adoption years ago as part of a long-term publicity strategy. The documents, he claimed, showed irregular financial transactions between Caldwell Enterprises and the home dating back several years. Ryan remained surprisingly calm as Victor spoke. He had anticipated this move, understanding that Victor's desperation would eventually drive him to overreach. When Victor finished his presentation, Ryan simply pressed a button on his laptop. The large screen behind him came to life, showing security camera footage from Victor's office. The footage revealed Victor meeting with various individuals, planning each stage of his campaign against Ryan and Maya. Most damaging was a recorded conversation where Victor discussed his plan to purchase and demolish St. Catherine's home, laughing about how a few displaced orphans were a small price to pay for regaining control of Caldwell Enterprises. As the footage played, the room grew silent. Victor's face lost its confidence, replaced by dawning horror as he realized his own meticulous plotting had become his undoing. But the true turning point came from an unexpected source. Maya, who had been sitting quietly in the front row, stood and walked to the podium. Without looking at Victor, she began sharing her story, not of victimization, but of transformation. She spoke about finding hope through art, about the strength she discovered in herself, and about learning to trust again. Her voice, clear and unwavering, filled the room with an authority that no adult could match. "Mr. Sterling tried to make my story about power and money," she said, looking directly at the cameras. "But it's really about family, the one you're born with, the one you find, and the one you choose to become." She turned to Ryan, reaching for his hand. "My mother chose to give me a chance at having a father when she signed those papers. And my father chose to become the person she always believed he could be." The revelation that followed stunned everyone. Lisa's final letter had included proof that Victor had known about Maya's existence from the beginning. He had deliberately kept the information from Ryan, planning to use it as leverage when the time was right. The letter, along with Lisa's journal entries, had been entrusted to Sarah Chen, who now stepped forward to corroborate the story. In the aftermath, Victor's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Major clients abandoned Sterling Development Group as evidence of his unethical practices emerged. The board of directors forced his resignation, and criminal investigations were launched into various aspects of his business dealings. The story concluded with a moment of quiet triumph. 1 year after the press conference, Maya unveiled her largest work yet, a massive mural on the side of the new Lisa Reynolds Art Center. The piece showed a family of butterflies emerging from chrysalises, their wings bearing the faces of children from St. Catherine's. In the center, a larger butterfly carried the combined features of Lisa, Ryan, and Maya, symbolizing the power of love to transform and heal across generations. Ryan and Maya stood together at the mural's dedication ceremony, their bond now unshakable. The girl who had once felt abandoned had become a symbol of hope for other children in the system, while the man who had once valued wealth above all else had discovered the true meaning of success in the love of his daughter. The story of the Caldwells became more than just a tale of redemption. It became a testament to the possibility of change, the strength of forgiveness, and the enduring power of family bonds forged through both blood and choice.